Continuing to read from Katherine Applegate's The One and Only Bob. We are starting today on page 16, No One. I'm going to take off the dust jacket because it keeps falling off. No one. That's what being man's best friend can get you. A black highway, an empty box, and no one in the world but you. Early days. I don't remember much about my early puppy days. It was 3 years ago, but sometimes it feels like 300. Mostly I recall fighting with my sibs for the best primo meal spot. Lots of squirming and squeaking. Everything soft and milk-smelling and movable, like we were one great, big, complicated animal. I never met my dad, and my mom didn't say much about him, except that he was trouble. Mom had a beautiful fawn coat, Chihuahua, some this, some that. Nice, messy bloodline. Mutt's rule. Mom crooned to us, told us stories, laid down the law. I wonder if she knew she didn't have much time to prepare us for the world. We were born in a dark place, probably under some porch stairs, I suspect, since I remember the sound of boots plodding up and down, the biting and ugly smell of human feet. They called my mom Rio. They fed her most days, though sometimes she had to fend for herself. She never showed fear toward them or respect, indifference, I guess you'd say, unless they tried to handle one of us. She growled then, hoping to make it clear that we were hers and hers alone. I got myself picked up a couple times. The hands reached in and grabbed. They were rough and smelled of strange scents, bitter and meaty. My mom's growl made me fearless. I wiggled and yelped. The hands shoved me back into the warm place where I could sleep and drink and dream in safety. Still, I understood in my simple puppy way that dogs belonged to humans, and that was how it would always be. Boss. My mom wasn't much for names. She had a lot of litters. I guess she'd run out of ideas. My brother first was Natch, the firstborn. Runt, my youngest bro, was the last. Dot had a little spot on her back, and Yip was always complaining. I was rowdy, goes without saying, and that left my sister. We called her Boss. Boss was small but mean, with a distinctive, sharp-sounding bark. She could outmaneuver any of us to the best spot for dining. I admired her grit, even if she did get on my nerves. As we got a bit older, less blind, more cocky, I fought her off occasionally, but mostly Boss won. She was fearless, that pup. Alone. The truck happened without warning one night. They threw us in a box, left my mom behind. I can still hear her frantic howls. I landed in a muddy ditch. It was a cloudy night, nearly freezing. Even the moon had abandoned us. And the smells, everything so wild and unknown. Animals with big jaws and bigger appetites. Birds that swooped in to kill. Death and life all mixed up together. I searched for my siblings until the truth became clear. I was utterly alone. Cars. The next morning I began my slow journey, moving through the tall, wet grass, my limbs stiff from the cold. Now and then I'd drink from a mud puddle or gnaw on some grass. By evening I was wobbly with hunger and thirst. I followed the highway. Every time a four-wheeled creature roared by, I froze in fear. And yet, and this what always slays me, I knew that cars meant humans, and humans meant the possibility of living, just as much as they meant the possibility of dying. The owl. Darkness had fallen when it came out of nowhere. The owl. A shadow in a shadow. They don't make a sound, you know. Not a sound. It's quite impressive when you think of it. Luck. Just as her talons, those marvelous weapons, raked my fur, I caught my front foot in a small hole and stumbled. If she'd gotten hold of my body, I wouldn't be here. But all she managed to do was grab my tail. Only time in my life I've regretted my handsome hindquarters. I was airborne, hanging upside down, dizzy and dazed, and just crazy enough to think, hey, I'm actually flying, before the terror hit full force. I caught a whiff of the other animals below. Later I found out they were pocket gophers. But back then I just knew I was smelling something completely foreign. The owl must have decided the gophers would make a more satisfying meal. She let loose her grip, and I plummeted to the earth. More luck. Maybe it was my puppy fat, or my soft bones, or my incredible good fortune, but I didn't die. Didn't even break anything. I'd flown twice in my short life and lived to tell the tale. Will. I found a small hollow at the base of a fallen tree, poked my nose in, and got a swat and a hiss from a grouchy raccoon. Keep going, waddling, whimpering. Lights ahead. Now strange smells. Kept going, kept going. It's amazing how the sheer will not to die can keep you moving. Exit 8. I finally came to a small road curving off the main highway. Exit 8 turned out to be. And a big billboard overhead had a picture of a terrifying animal on it. Of course, I didn't know what a billboard was. Didn't know that this scary animal was a gorilla, let alone that he would become my dearest friend. But something told me to follow the off-ramp. And eventually I ended up at the Exit 8 Big Top Mall and Video Arcade, home of the one and only Ivan. History. I made it to the mall, slept in dirty hay by some garbage bins. The next night I found that hole in Ivan's cage, stole his banana, slept on his belly, and the rest, as they say, is history. For 2 years I lived at that seedy old place that was part mall, part circus, and all crummy. But that was nothing compared to Ivan. He'd spent 27 lousy years there. And our dear old friend Stella, an old circus elephant, was stuck there most of her life too. When Stella passed away, it nearly broke Ivan's heart. I tried like crazy to get him through those dark days, but what really saved him, I think, was Ruby, our baby elephant friend. Before Stella died, Ivan promised her he'd get Ruby out of that awful place. Until my amazement, he actually pulled it off. Ivan and Ruby and a bunch of our other pals ended up going to different places, zoos and sanctuaries that knew how to take care of them. There were others of their kind. They are loved and well cared for. It's been over a year now since we all moved, and they seem so much happier. Me, I lucked out. My girl Julia, whose dad worked at the mall, decided her family needed a dog. Who was I to argue? 2 square meals, my own bed, all the belly rubs I could beg for. What dog in his right mind would say no to that? The best part is we don't live far from Ivan and Ruby. I get to see them all the time. I'm glad they're nearby, and I'm thrilled they've settled in so well. Really, it's a solid solution, but it's not a perfect one. Tennis ball. The way I understand things is like this. We live on a lonely ball called Earth, and humans have basically been throwing it against a wall for so long that the poor old ball is falling apart. It's like me with a tennis ball, chewing away until it's nothing but pieces of slimy rubber that taste like, well, slimy rubber. And that means there aren't as many places left for wild animals. Seems there are good zoos and good sanctuaries and bad sanctuaries, just like there are good dog families and bad dog families. The good places are trying to keep wild species healthy and safe. They don't want endangered animals to go away forever. They don't want the earth to turn into a slimy, dilapidated tennis ball. Although, honestly, slimy rubber doesn't taste half bad. You should try it sometimes. The thing is, I would get anything to see my dear pal Ivan deep in the jungles of Africa where he was born, or to see Ruby running across the savannah with a herd of elephants, her big old ears flapping in the wind. I'd give up a mile-high pile of bacon cheeseburgers to see that happen. I really would. But it ain't happening. I get that. And so do they. When you're an animal, it helps to be a realist. Part 2. Dream. This morning I wake up in my cozy bed, way too early for Julia to make me breakfast. She and her mom and dad are still asleep, and even the guinea pigs are silent. My belly grumbles, and once again I curse my thumblessness. Humans are one big design flaw. The inferior noses, the inscrutable humdrum rumps, and they don't get me started on their odor. But the opposable thumb idea, yeah, that was a nice upgrade. The cans I could open, the doorknobs I could conquer. Anyways, I feel worried. Off. Worry's a waste of time, and it doesn't fit with my tough guy act. But sometimes I can't seem to help myself. Before I woke up, I've been dreaming about Ivan and Ruby and Stella. And it wasn't a nice dream. It was a fun and run toe twitcher. Nope, this one was a nightmare, a bad one. We were swimming, all of us, in a black raging river. And for some reason I was in the lead, and I kept looking back, telling them I was going to save them. Me? Save them? 2 elephants and a gorilla? As I paddled like mad, their voices faded. I looked behind me, and they'd vanished. And then I heard it. A faint bark, that bark. I woke up then, like I always do. I did an all-over shake, trying to toss off the stench of the nightmare that clung to me like shampoo after a bath. I told myself to chill, get a grip, stop worrying about nothing. And yet, some primitive part of my brain, the wolf in me, maybe, is on edge. A lot can go wrong in the moment left to chance, the blink of an eye, the bounce of a bone. There are so many ways the world can find to fail you. The smell of a storm. By the time everyone else wakes up, I've calmed down, but the wind outside sure hasn't. It's an early fall Saturday, gusty, with scrapes of sun. Clouds bouncing off each other like bunnies in a basket, messages on the wind pouring in from everywhere. From dogs making their daily rounds, from feral cats, from anxious raccoons. Basically, everyone is asking the same question. What is the deal with the weather today? I already know. Weather Channel was on last night, with a screen full of big, white, cotton candy-looking swirls. Julia's dad, George, has already taped up several windows. Sarah, her mom, packed an emergency bag just in case we have to evacuate. Another hurricane is on the way, third this season. Not as big as the last couple, but slow-moving. I've seen the routine, know the ropes. Once breakfast is done, I sit on the couch in the living room, waiting impatiently for Julia to come home so she can take me on our daily stroll. She has a dog walking service, and she's out walking other dogs. I get my own private walk because she's my own private girl. I can practically taste the storm coming through the open window, the back of my throat tingle, the metallic edge, the fizzy energy. But it's more than that. It's as if the air is up to no good, sneaking up on the world and looking for trouble. We will continue reading The One and Only Bob by Katherine Applegate.